What is up, guys? It is Pup, your coach of the Green Bay Drillers, and today we are looking at all of the teams and analyzing them for the GWA. And so I'm go over a couple of rules first. If I remember to do this, then I'll put them on the screen. But the most important thing is Terra rules. So in Terra rules, we have up to 4 Pokemon can terrestrialize. So one above 15 points gets a stab and another type. One between 10 and 14 points gets a stab and 2 other types. And then 2 Pokemon 9 points and under get a stab and 2 other types. And their budget must be 12 or lower. And there's also a couple that can't terrestrialize. So when I complain about people's Terra types, you can't Terra Spectrier, Regieleki, Chien-Pao, Zamazenta, or Palafin. But with that out of the way, we're going to just start right off and go on to Steph's team. They had the number 3 pick in the draft, and they picked, right here, picked this guy, Single Strike, or Shifu, who's definitely a very good pick. Number 1 was Palafin, number 2 was Iron Valiant. Single Strike, or Shifu, is definitely really, really good. It just destroys things. And pop a Choice Band on that thing, and it'll destroy Life Orb. You can set up speed with Trailblaze and hit through Protect. Next, I got Entei. Entei's a fine pick as a Terra Captain as well. Got Gliscor as their 3rd round pick, which I think is a steal. Gliscor is really, really good. Maybe not as good in draft format as in like standard Smogon OU, but it's still really, really good and forces a lot of prep out of your opponent. And then 4th round, got Iron Bundle. I really don't hate that. I think it's definitely not good enough to go in the 1st round. I would never. That's not even true. I have drafted it in the 1st round at the very beginning of the gen. But after seeing how it is, it has a good speed tier, but you know, you're going to miss Hydro Pumps. The Freeze Dry is really good into a lot of teams, but everything is just going to prep for you. It's such a big threat. And you have to decide whether you're going to run like booster energy for special attack, if you want to run specs. If you run into a water absorb Pokemon, then you're kind of screwed. You know, it's just really tough to build around that Mon, but it does force a lot of team building. So it's not a bad pickup in the 4th round as a Terra Captain. You got Venusaur. Not much to say about Venusaur. I don't really think it works too well on a non-sun team, and you have another grass type anyways. So I'm kind of wondering what Venusaur does here. You got Vaporeon as well. Vaporeon's always good, but you're doubling up on water types already. Klefki. Klefki's a great pick. Setting up spikes for the Iron Bundle is going to be awesome. It's also obviously very good for the Urshifu. Your team doesn't benefit from screens that much. I mean, I could definitely see like Swords Dance or Shifu, but you don't have something that's gonna like Dragon Dance or Shell Smash under the screens. You have Meloetta next. Definitely could like Calm Mind or Nasty Plot under screens, so I mean, it could be worse. Then you got more Pico. It's a spinner, an electric type, pretty fast. But I mean, compared to the other things on your team, your speed tiers right now are just not really looking great. You got Go-Go as another Terra Captain and Drifblim. So about this team, go over the Terra Captains. So Entei is Fire, Normal, and Grass. Iron Bundle is Water and Ghost. Meloetta is Normal, Fighting, Fairy, and Go-Go is Grass, Dragon, and Ground. And you know, I don't have too many complaints about their Terra, but why do you go Ghost on Iron Bundle? I don't really understand. And yeah, going Ghost, I feel like you would normally want to go something like against something that is gonna check you. I mean, maybe like Terra Electric to cover like some water types that aren't weak to Freeze Dry, or you just want to hit a little bit harder. You could go like Dual Stab. I just don't really see what Ghost does for you exactly. It's not like you need a spin blocker. You have Drifblim. So that confuses me. I love the types on Entei though. Fire is obviously you got to bring the stab. but normal for hitting extreme speeds is going to be great. Not as good as Dragonite, but you can still pull out Choice Bandit on this thing and destroy with extreme speed. And then Grass is just good to switch type matchups on your Water, Rock, and Ground types. Go down there to Meloetta. I think Meloetta, definitely Fairy is a great type for Meloetta. I kind of think the Psychic might have been a better stab than normal, but I'm not complaining. I think that those are pretty good. And then Go-Go fills out your 12, since you have 9 on Meloetta, 3 for Go-Go. Grass, Dragon, Ground. I don't really see this thing coming to too many games anyways, but it could definitely scare some things off with the Ground Terra. Dragon, it's pretty mid. I don't think I would choose to Terra into Dragon unless it's a stab type. I wish you could have a way to fit Terra on Drifblim. I feel like it would be really good. You know, unburdened sweeps. Like, you can Calm Mind, Strength Sap, you can be a wall, you can sweep. Yeah, so I feel like that would be really important. So this team in general, it's decent, but with all of the mons that we could have drafted, I feel like really like Venusaur being on here kind of holds us back, and like a lack of strong fairy type moves is going to hold you back as well. You can't really hit anything with Klefki. You know, you might play a rough something. And I don't mind it being like a more offensive team. You obviously have Gliscor and Vaporeon that can serve as walls, and then Klefki as well that is not going to reliably heal itself, but it's going to be there and it's going to set up what it wants to. And I think that's a pretty good strategy for this, you know, this meta right now. Very much offensive, but Venusaur just sticks out like a sore thumb. I definitely feel like you could have done better. Speed tiers are also like pretty bad, I would say. Iron Bundle at 136, obviously amazing. You're definitely gonna force Scarfs, but you have what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 Pokemon between 90 and 100. So, I mean, if we just look here at like Rampiore's team, he's just gonna run Iron Treads or, you know, Alolan Ninetales and be able to outspeed every single one of those. And, you know, a bunch of base 100s are around, and they're just going to outspeed most of everything. Entei doesn't really want to run Jolly all the time to force that speed tier. So you have a huge gap between 136 and 100. The rest of it is actually pretty good. You cover it pretty well. Wish you had something at 85 instead of 280s, but it's not really like the biggest deal. And go down here, look at the type chart. Steph's on the left. You know, I really don't hate this. I mean, usually you see like a big ice weakness, but you actually do pretty well covering up against that, even though you have Gliscor and you have Venusaur, who I don't really think does anything. Vaporeon's going to be a great resist. I mean, you never really want to resist with your Entei or your Iron Bundle, but they're always there as options. Look down here at the stats. It's sorted by speed. You know, your stats look pretty good. I think that you definitely have a strong special attacker. You have Meloetta, who I'm not sure how much is going to come. You have multiple strong physical attackers. So you might really just want to make sure to bring some more special stuff. You know, you obviously have Iron Bundle and you have Meloetta, but Meloetta's not coming every week. Iron Bundle probably will, but I feel like most teams are going to dedicate more physical bulk, because you have to deal with that Urshifu, you have to deal with the Entei, you have to deal with a Gliscor clicking Earthquake. You know, more Pico when that comes is gonna hit you real hard too. If Go-Go ever comes, it's gonna hit you on the physical side. Whereas on the special side, obviously you have Meloetta, you have Iron Bundle, but Meloetta's never coming. What else are you really gonna hit them with? Like, the Vaporeon's gonna hit him with a Scald. Drifblim, if you get to set up, is going to hit them. So I feel like switching out Venusaur for something that you're going to bring more often and another special attacker would be a little bit better. Go down here, look at these rocks and hazards and stuff. Now, you got 3 defoggers. That's plenty. 1 rapid spinner. Morpeko doesn't really want to come to this game though, but you don't have a huge rocks weakness anyways, so it's fine. You have one of the best spikers in Klefki, who can just like put up anything, so that's perfect. You have wish support with Vaporeon. You have a lot of Volt Turn momentum. You know, just between like Iron Bundle, Urshifu, Gliscor, you know, you might not really want to run stuff on like a Meloetta. You might not want to put Flip Turn on your Vaporeon, but you definitely have a decent enough turn core to get by. Priority, obviously, just having extreme speed on your Entei is going to be pretty important, and it's really, really good. Sucker Punch also on Urshifu is great priority. And down here, the only thing that really matters is knockoff. And I mean, you've got knockoff on Gliscor. That's really all you're going to bring. It's not bad. Could be worse. You know, none of this stuff matters as much down here. Setup sweepers. Yeah, you have Swords Dance. You could set up your Gliscor too, I guess. But I just feel like this team lacks some synergy. And I'll probably give it about like a B tier rating. It's definitely not a bad team, but I definitely don't see that team going all the way. Next up, we're going to look at Rampiore here. So Rampiore is the #1 pick. They picked Palafin, who is their mascot. Palafin's a great pick. Cannot Terra, but it just destroys things. You switch it out, you get it back in, and you just click Choice Band to Jet Punch, and everything dies. Obviously not really. Next you get Calebue, and you get Ninetales with it, which we shouldn't have let them do that. It's alright though. You get Iron Treads, which is super underrated. Amoonguss, Gardevoir, Knucklestack, Talonflame, Dusclops, and Slowking. I think Slowking as a last pick is actually really good on this team. You have a lot of defensive mons. You know, you got the Slowking, you got the Amoonguss that are going to run mega defensive. A Knucklestack and Dusclops are just solely there for defense. And then you have a couple mons that are just there to attack. You know, you got Palafin and the Calebue. So setting those up under Aurora Veil is going to be really nice. You can definitely get sweeps with backs. You can definitely just click buttons with Palafin. Think that you have a lot more synergy than the last team we looked at. One thing about this team is that you have a pretty big Stealth Rock weakness. Obviously, looking at this team, you see, yeah, Talonflame's 4 times weak. It's probably going to run Boots, okay? You got Ninetales, and you got Backs. Neither of them want to run Boots at all. And you have a really good Rapid Spinner in Iron Tusk, but are you really going to bring Iron Tusk every week when you also want to bring Palafin? You want to bring Backs, at least. Probably want to bring Ninetales. Amoonguss is really good into a lot of matchups. I feel like, I don't know, you don't want to run heavy duty boots on a lot of your mons, and the hazards are really just going to chip you. I feel like that's one way that this team could really get taken advantage of. Before I forget, let's go over the Terra types. Calebue has Dragon and Ground. Gardevoir has Fairy, Fire, and Water. Knucklestack has Rock, Steel, and Fairy. And Dusclops has the Ghost, Fairy, and Dark. I don't really know what Dark is doing on Dusclops. I don't think you're particularly weak to Psychic anyways. You have Slowking. So, I mean, that's a little bit confusing. It just makes you a little bit more weak to Fairy. You already don't love switching into a Fairy type. I mean, obviously, Amoonguss. But if Amoonguss is chipped or if Amoonguss is dead, then you don't have the best Fairy switch-ins because you're relying on either Iron Treads, whose will get chipped down over the course of the battle, and if it's trying to switch in on hazards and spin them away, it's definitely going to get chipped down. Then you have Talonflame as well, who isn't going to come that often and doesn't want to be there as a wall. All right. I don't really have an issue with any of the other Terra types. Maybe Ground is a little bit suspect for the backs. Dragon is also a little bit, because you might just want to power up your Icicle Spear. Run loaded dice on that thing and just destroy with 5 hits Icicle Spear after a Dragon Dance. But I don't hate it anyways. Speed tiers, you got Talonflame 126, Alolan Ninetales 109, Iron Treads 106, Palafin at 100, Bax at 87, Gardevoir 80, and then a huge drop off to have Formons 35 and under. I feel like that's a huge mistake to have that big of a drop off. You're never really punishing anyone. You know, if they have like a base 65 speed Sandslash, like it's gonna outspeed all of your lower Pokemon. You don't have any, you're not putting them at risk to get speed crept by anything. They don't have to worry about putting any speed investment, so they can just invest in that bulk or that attack every single time. So I feel like that's a huge mistake, but the top half, it looks great. You're not forced to run Scarf Gardevoir every week. You're not forced to have to outspeed stuff with the Baxcalibur, Dragon Dancing. You have priority in Jet Punch. You have priority in Gale Wings, Talonflame. So that part looks really, really good. Weaknesses down here, obviously, as I said, your Rock's weak. And there's like not too much that you can do about that. I see maybe Dark is there to be like a Ghost and Dark resist, but I also don't think that it's that amazing. You have Knuckle Stack if you really need a Ghost switch in, and Dark is not like a super common type anyways, but you have the Ninetales that can always destroy any Dark types and set up Aurora Veil anyways. Looking at all these stats here, I mean, they look pretty good. I'm a little bit worried about your physical defense side, because you're not going to bring Dusclops every game. You're not going to bring Knuckle Stack. The only real thing you have here is Iron Treads. And if you run to a really strong like fighting type or fire type, they could really like poke holes in this team. That's definitely how you're going to break it. The special side, I definitely would not want to hit you on the special side. You know, Slowking's just sitting there at 110. Like, it's going to soak up everything. It's going to get Regenerator. You know, if you do end up bringing Dusclops, it's got really good special defense there as well. You've got Gardevoir, who you're going to run offensively most of the time, but it's still going to soak up special hits. And then Ninetales as well. You can just soak up a special hit and set up an Aurora Veil every time. Go down here, Stealth Rocks. It's going to be unfortunate to have to run rocks on your Iron Treads. I don't really feel like your team needs the Stealth Rocks. If anything, I feel like Spikes would be a little bit better, because you're already hitting the flying types pretty well with Baxcalibur sweep. But I mean, rocks are pretty decent just to chip stuff for Palafins, chip stuff for Bax. But it's not necessary, so I understand why you wouldn't have too many. Your Rapid Spinner is great, but I feel like you need more than just one Rapid Spinner and one 4 times weak Defogger. You have Wish and Healing Wish. Healing Wish Gardevoir could really come in clutch. I don't really see you Wish passing or Heal Belling with that thing, but what I do see is some good momentum. You know, Volt Switch on Iron Treads, you're probably going to want to run that 3 out of 4 times at least. Flip turn Palafin, make sure that thing can get in and get out. And you have U-turn on Talonflame if you really want to bring that. If you bring a Boots variant, you could bring something bulky, bring Roost, Defog, Brave Bird, U-turn. You know, you could really put that there to stop a special or stop a fairy type. You know, you obviously, I mean, it's not showing Jet Punch, but you got Jet Punch. You have Ice Shard, which is really good for Bax. But besides that, like, you're not really going to be running too much. You're not going to run Shadow Sneak Gardevoir. So your priority maybe could be slightly better, especially if you run into like a bulky water type. You know, bulky water type is really going to stop your sweep. You got a couple knockoffers, really good on Iron Treads. Iron Treads is really doing a lot of heavy lifting for you, which, I mean, it is what it is, but I feel like it needs a little bit more support to lift that Stealth Rocks weakness. All right, let's see who is next up here. And let me change these names. So this is going to be Dries right here. And then next with the Deoxys Speed, we have Obscured. All right, let's start off with Dries though. Chien-Pao, obviously a great pick. It's your number 4 overall. and you follow that up with Ursaluna Blood Moon. I'm not a huge fan of Blood Moon, but with Terra, I think it could probably be really good. You got Corviknight, who I figured out through Zero Zone that Corviknight's really not that good in draft. You have to go pretty offensive, and you're not really just going to be able to click roost on a lot of things because they're going to bring coverage for you. You bring Hydrapple, which I think is going to be great. You can run any sort of set. You got the Terra Captain on it, Regenerator. It's going to be really good. You have Infernape, then Araquanid as a Terra Captain. Why am I Tentacruel? The Comfey, Cleavor, and then Misdreavus. So a little bit interesting. Look at your speed tiers. You got 2 base 100s, but I'm not really sure where I would put Comfey in here anyways. Because Comfey is going to run Modest probably most of the time. It doesn't rely on its speed because it got triage. You also have base 135 in Shenpao is obviously amazing. 108 in Infernape is not as good as it used to be, but still pretty good. And then you have a drop off to 85. You know, you have pretty decent speed tiers. I do feel like you should have something in the 90s. Like a 95 speed tier is really good. I mean, you just look over here at Obscured. He has 3 Pokemon that are base 90. You want to force those to try to run Jolly or Timid to try to outspeed stuff, because at this point, like, they might just be able to run Adamant. Let's actually go over your Terras first. So Blood Moon has normal and poison. Hydrapple is Dragon Fairy Steel. Araquanid is Water Fairy Steel. And Misdreavus is Ghost Fairy Electric. So a lot of fairy types. Obviously, Fairy is the best Terra type. It's actually not even close. Fairy is so good in the metagame right now, and it probably will be good forever. I'm slightly confused by the poison type on Ursaluna. You know, maybe you know something that I don't. Maybe I just don't really know too much about Ursaluna. But I don't know why I would bring poison. I mean, you're going to resist fighting type moves. But honestly, that's it. That's all I see. I wouldn't hate going... I don't even know. You know, maybe it is good. I don't really have any other better suggestions. So that's what it is. Your Hydrapple, I love it. I feel like Steel is really good because you're just going to change on the ice types and resist it and be able to damage them back. Fairy is just really good offensive type. Araquanid, I think that this is pretty good too. Maybe doubling up on Steel. Like, you have Water, Fairy, and Steel, but you also have Hydrapple that wants to Terra into a Steel type a lot, and you have Corviknight there already. So I'm not 100% sure if Steel is the best. Obviously, you're gonna be neutral with the fire type moves because you have Water Bubble. So it could be nice, but I don't know how often you're gonna bring Terra Araquanid anyways. And then we have Misdreavus. I don't really see Misdreavus coming to many games, but I guess it could end up coming as like a choice scarfer, and you know, click in Terra Blast Fairy. It could be really powerful into some teams. I think one thing I would like to see is a Terra Ghost, because you don't have a really good spin blocker. I mean, obviously Misdreavus is your ghost type, but if you run like Terra Ghost Araquanid or Terra Ghost on your Blood Moon, where you don't really need another type, you can block the spins that are going to try to get you from Cleavor. So I see Cleavor, I don't see spin blocker. Speed tiers are great, I just went over that. Type chart, weak to rocks, that's really normal. Weak to electric is fine. You're not really going to be bringing all those mons every week. Obviously, it is a pretty big weakness, but if they click an electric move and you switch into your Ursaluna, then you can get a really, really big attack off most of the time. So I really don't hate it. Yeah, I definitely think that this team has pretty good synergy. Look at your stats right here. Forgive me because this is my first time looking through like everyone's teams like this. So if I miss stuff or if I just am being bad, then oh well. I feel like on this team, you kind of need a little bit more like hazard that you're going to want to bring. Obviously, you have one of the best defoggers, which is Corviknight. But Comfy is not going to bring defog most of the time. Cleavor is not going to bring defog most of the time. If you bring Tentacruel, it'll probably have spin. But I feel like it's really important to get away from rocks because you have Qianpao. And Qianpao hates stealth rocks really badly. You also have Cleavor, which hates it too. You have Arachnid, which hates it. Infernape doesn't want to switch in because you're not going to run boots. You're going to be running some sort of choice item or life orb or expert belt. And that's the same for Qianpao. You're not going to want to run heavy duty boots most of the time. You're going to want to run the life orb. You're going to want to run choice band. You're going to want to run focus sash. It's really good. So I feel like maybe adding another spinner on here or defogger that you're actually going to bring in a lot of games is going to be really important because that Corviknight is going to get taken advantage of if it tries to defog. I think sticky webs are really great on your team. It allows Infernape to really shine. And it also allows Cleavor to be a big threat. Normally you don't really see Cleavor doing too much besides setting up your rocks with Stone Axe because it's pretty slow. But if you can get it faster than everything, it can do a lot of damage. So I'm definitely scared of that. I think Comfy on this team is really good as a heal beller because you really don't want that Qianpao to be burned. You don't want it to be burned. You don't want your Corviknight to be Thunderwaved. I mean, you don't want anything to be Thunderwaved, really. Like, yeah. A lot of the stuff on this team just gets really crippled by status. Sorry, losing my words. So I feel like having the heal bell on here is really good, and it's priority because of triage. Comfy is probably going to want to come to a lot of games because you need that strong fairy type attack. Even if you're running Terra Fairy on your Hydra Apple, you really want to bring Comfy to a lot of these games because it's so strong. So I feel like that's pretty good on this team. Your momentum, got a lot of U-turners. What are you going to run U-turn on? Probably 3 out of these 4 mons every week, maybe 4. Flip turn on Tentacruel is pretty good, but you also suffer from, you only have 4 slots. You can run Rapid Spin and Scald, and if you want to set up Toxic Spikes, or if you want to hit them on the, like with the poison, if you want to set up Toxic, if you want Giga Drain, I don't really know how much you're going to run Flip turn. Priority on this team, it's all right. You have Ice Shard and Sucker Punch on Qianpao, which are amazing, and then you have Mach Punch on Infernape, and that's pretty much it. You can run Vacuum Wave sometimes on the Ursaluna, depending on what other kind of moves you want to bring. So I don't hate it. Think that it is definitely not a weak point of the team. Knockoff, I mean, also that's another move for Tenta that you'd want to run. But you're not really going to want to run it on Infernape or on Comfy, really. So you don't have any way of weakening those defensive mons. I feel like this team, it might struggle with breaking specific walls, especially something that won't let Qianpao in. Because if you don't let Qianpao in, then, I mean, what is really going to break it? Obviously, you have Infernape, you have the Blood Moon, that are going to be able to do a lot of damage to it, but they're trading their lives to break one wall. And I'm not even sure if you're going to be able to break everything consistently. I feel like that you can just run something physically defensive, and then you might be able to live hits from Infernape and Qianpao, might be able to get burns off on Qianpao and just completely cripple it. You might be able to set up Stealth Rocks and just cripple everything and sweep it with a Scarfer later. You have a little bit of weakness on your team. I still think it's really strong compared to the other teams that we've looked at so far, though. Next up, I'm going to look at Obscured. I don't know too much about Deoxys. This is Deoxys speed. I feel like it has to be pretty good. You get it as a 19 pointer, so it's going to be good. But really, look at the next 2 picks. You got Rillaboom and Sneasler. It's a disgusting core. You have too much speed on this. You also get Thunderous Therian, Moltres as a Terra Captain, Lucario, Chandelure, Gudra from Hisui. Yeah, that's right. Zoroark and Furret. I really, really like Zoroark on this. You can definitely bring that to a lot of weeks. I mean, I feel like every single Mon here, maybe besides Furret, probably can come to 2 or 3 games. Deoxys Speed is obviously really good to lead. You can click Psycho Boost. You can get up your rocks and spikes, I'm pretty sure. Taunt other leads. It's really disruptive and can just completely break something with the Psycho Boost and Superpower. But the real issue to this team is your Sneasler. Terra Sneasler is just going to destroy stuff. And your Terra type on Sneasler is fighting and flying. So once you get the Grassy Seed Acrobatics off, nothing is really going to be able to live that. Especially if you get to +2. If you Sword Stance up and get the Unburn boost, it's pretty much game against every team. So that's super scary. I feel like Thundurus does a really good job here wall breaking for you because it's so dang strong. You don't really have anything that's going to live attacks from both Thundurus and Rillaboom. You know, so those are just 2 really good, really good breakers for you. I feel like it's a little bit better job breaking than Dries' team on the other side, because you don't, going back to Dries, you don't want to be breaking and trading your Chien-Pao for a wall because you need that as your win con. Whereas on Obscure's team, you have Thundurus that can break, you have Rillaboom that can break, you could even break with Sneasler, and any one of those 3 mons can be your win con in the end game. Let's go down here. Actually, speed looks great. You have 3 base 90, which I don't love, but I mean, you have the best speed tiers. Like, you hit 180, you have 120 with Unburden, 105, 101, so you're outspeeding the base 100s, and then 90 is not bad. Maybe would have been nice to have something else slow here. You know, if you run into something that wants to click Trick Room against you, then it's going to get off 4 free attacks. But that's literally just nitpicking. That's pretty good. Terra types obviously went over Sneasler. Moltres has Fire, Fairy, and Water. Zoroark is Dark, Ghost, Poison. Furret is normal, Ghost, Fighting. I feel like I'm not 100% sure about the types on Zoroark. I mean, you're powering up, obviously, Dark Pulse and Sludge Bomb, which I guess you could definitely lead this thing instead of the Deoxys, catch something off guard, maybe a Fairy type, and just destroy it with Sludge Bomb. I could definitely see that coming, which is really scary. But I don't know. I feel like maybe Terra Fire would have also worked pretty well. I see you have 2 other fire types, but I feel like it still could have been really good to break down some of the things on opponents' teams, because none of your other fire types are either with Chandelure. Chandelure is not fast, and it's kind of frail. Gets destroyed by a lot of common types, like by knockoff or by Earthquake. You know, and Moltres, a lot of the time it's just gonna be sitting in there and roosting and maybe defogging. Never really gonna run that offensive. So I thought maybe Terra Fire on this thing would have been a little bit better, but oh well. Now looking at this, Rocks is obviously gonna be an issue, but you're gonna run heavy duty boots on your Moltres. You might run heavy duty boots on Chandelure or Thundurus. That's all right. But your ground weakness, you have Rillaboom, but if you don't have grassy terrain up, then Earthquake destroys a lot of your team. You bring Earthquake, you bring Stone Edge, and you destroy everything. And you don't even have to run Earthquake. You could run high horsepower. I guess that's Rillaboom forcing you to go for 5% less accuracy and 5 less base attack. But it's destroying your team. You have no switch-ins at all. I mean, it's really not that bad, because you sack something, maybe you go and sack that Rillaboom that dies in 2 shots to high horsepower, but then you bring in your Sneasler and you be able to sweep. So I can see what you're going for here. I definitely really like this. Your stats look great. No defense, as I just said. Nothing defensive except for Goodra, and Goodra gets demolished by the ground types. Obviously, you're going to be able to sweep. You're going to be able to win probably... How many games do we play? I don't even know. Maybe if we play like 10 games, you're going to be able to win 5 of them just by sweeping with Sneasler, sweeping with Thundurus. You know, I feel like that's really important. And it's going to get you a lot of games against underprepared opponents. Go down here. Yep, you got Stealth Rocks and Spikes. You're never going to bring Toxic Spikes on Sneasler. But you don't have a single spinner. So if someone gets like Sticky Webs up against you, it's pretty good. If someone gets Rocks up against you, it's detrimental to your team unless you're running Heavy Duty Boots exclusively on like 4 Pokemon. You have great momentum. U-turn and Volt Switch on just about everything important. And then you have Extreme Speed on 2 different Pokemon. You have Grassy Glide. You have Sucker Punch. You have Vacuum Wave. You're completely fine with your speed. You have Knockoff on so many Pokemon that can just disrupt and wall break. Your team is really good. It's just you need one thing on your team that is going to be able to like take a ground type attack. I feel like maybe if I were in charge of this team, what I would do is I would trade in Chandelure for a resist, for a ground resist, for a ground and rock resist, and maybe something that gets spin or defog if that's possible. And then I would also put the Terrifier on your Zoroark, so that you're not just losing out on all that fire damage, but you're switching that Terra because you don't really need Terra Ghost. I feel like that's not super duper important for how your team functions. Anyways, this team, it's going to be completely disgusting. If you make just like 1 or 2 free agency trades and get something that can eat a hit, so you don't just get swept by ground type like a bulky Garchomp. Like if you don't want to get destroyed by that, then you gotta switch out something. All right, let's move on to our next 2 teams. Let me pull it up here since it's not gonna register the names. We got Wolfhaley on the left, and then we have Fist on the right. Wolfhaley starts off with Archaladon with Urshifu Rapid Strike. Landorus T is good. Superior. Iron Boulder in the 5th round is crazy. Got Pheasantipity, Fortress. Why am I forgetting your name? Politoed, Hisuian Quillfish, and Weirdeer. On first glance, this team looks really powerful. Boulder can smash walls through teams. You also have Rapid Strike, who's going to destroy stuff. Superior can destroy teams depending on really what they have as walls. If they have something unaware, if they have something that can resist and eat. A +2 Leaf Storm. I really like some of the utility you have here. Landorus is obviously a staple, and it's really good. Fortress is a great spinner for you, even though you don't actually really need it that much. But it's really good to get up spikes, which are good for your team. Looking at speed tiers, you have a big drop between 113 and 99. It's really unfortunate to have 3 Pokemon that are just on the outside of 90 and 100, because the base 100s are just going to outspeed you. You know, you're going to be forced to run a Scarf on something, even though you have 2 really fast Pokemon. You don't want to get taken advantage of by these base 100s, and there's a lot of them out there. So it's pretty frustrating for your team. I really like what your Iron Boulder does here. I love that it's a Terra Captain. You know, Terra types are Rock and Fighting. I feel like this can break a hole in any team. If you get a sub and a Sword Stance Up, it just destroys. Archaludon has Steel, Flying, and Fairy. Flying could be there to resist, to be immune to ground, which is actually really important on your team because you don't have very many ground switch-ins. And then Fairy is obviously amazing type to have. Fortress is going to be Steel, Fairy, and Ghost. So Fortress can act as your spin blocker. Perfect typing on that thing. And then you have Weird Ear as well, who's normal Fairy, Water. I don't really think you're going to bring Weird Ear too much, but it could be useful. One thing I really hate is that you don't have Terra Superior. And I know you would have to be no Terra on your Iron Boulder to be Terra Superior. But to be completely honest, I think that Terra Superior might be just better than Iron Boulder. Iron Boulder is just going to be able to destroy things with its 2 stabs anyways, and there's not too many switch-ins for that. I don't think adding Terra Fighting on that thing and even Stab Terra Rock is really going to get you that many more kills. I feel like putting Terra on Superior can allow it to destroy anything. I'm not exactly sure what the right typing would be. Based on your team here, you don't have a fire type. So putting Terra Fire on that thing to destroy the steel types that would want to switch into you, I feel like that would be really great. But that's just me. Let's look down here. Your other types. You're obviously weak to ground. We just said the Archaludon Terra covers that. You're not really going to want to Terra Flying all the time though. Luckily you have Landorus, which is the best ground switch in, but it's 4 times weak to ice. So if there's anything like a Mamoswine, it's going to roll through your team. And there's not really anything you can do about it. Look at the stats down here. I feel like you have pretty good stat distribution, maybe missing something more special. So you have Superior, but it has base 75 special attack, and you're not Terra. So you're going to double your special attack, but without Terra to boost yourself, I feel like it might be just not good enough. You also have Archaludon, who's at 125 special attack, which is great, but you're not going to be sweeping with Archaludon. So teams with special walls are just going to be able to switch into it. You have amazing attackers, obviously Iron Boulder, Urshifu, Landorus. You can run, most of your team has physical attacks. So I just feel like putting Terra on Superior is going to make your special offense just that much better. Your walls on this team, you have Fortress. Specially, you don't really have too much. You have Pheasantipede, who's base 125, but I feel like Pheasantipede just gets destroyed by some things. Obviously, cannot take an Earthquake. I don't know. I feel like Pheasantipede isn't really that good. Personally, I've never actually used it, but seeing it be used, I feel like it's just not enough to be able to hold up a special wall. That being said, offense is so much better in this meta. You have a lot of really good offense. I'm not docking you too much for that special wall, but if something sets up, if you let it set up, then you're going to get swept. Go down here. Rocks, you have some of the best hazard setters. You have Fortress, obviously. Landorus is amazing with rocks. Even the Quillfish can set up Toxic Spikes, which are really annoying. And then you have Fortress with Rapid Spin. You have 2 Defoggers. You're never really going to bring Defog on Serp, and you don't want to run it on the Landorus, but do you really need to remove hazards that badly? You have a grounded poison, so you're not going to get Toxic Spiked. You have 2 grounded poisons. You're not going to get Toxic Spiked. You have a couple of, if you have Terra Flying, then you're going to have a weakness, but that's pretty much all you have that's weak to rock. I don't think that you really need more Rapid Spin. I feel like you did a really good job here. You have a little bit of momentum, but not too much. It's going to be a little bit hard to get your big threats in. I think it's going to be really hard to switch into Archaludon. It can come in on a physical hit, maybe, and get a stamina boost, but it doesn't really want to take it doesn't want to take 3 or 4 hits. It'll just die, and it doesn't have the offense to kill stuff in one shot. Your priority is definitely weak. You have Sucker Punch on Urshifu and Aqua Jet on Urshifu, and that's all you have. Obviously, you have a couple quick attackers, but you're never really going to bring that. I feel like with your speed tiers, they're pretty good. You have 124, but You know, there's a lot of Pokemon that are going to outpace that. Sweepers are going to outpace you easily, and you have nothing really to stop those sweepers, especially on the special side. You have a couple hazers, a couple dragon tailors, but still never stopping the special sweep. So if I had to tell you do anything, I would say, well, I would switch Terra to Superior. I just think it's a little bit better. And I would say get something that can actually eat hits on the special side. You don't have like a very good offensive fairy as well. So, I mean, I don't know what's drafted. I don't know anything really. But, you know, Sylveon could work well on this team, because what really is Politoed doing here? Like, if you have some extra points, you get rid of Politoed, you know, get rid of Weirdeer maybe. And I mean, I guess you need 10 Pokemon, but you know, get rid of stuff. Maybe like drop Pheasantipity. You know, that's not really too good. You want like Sylveon, something that can eat hits. Florges is great on here too. We're gonna go to Fist next, and Fist, he is an amazing battler. I have played with him before, and he destroys people. And he has a demon team today. We got Terra Dragonpult, we got Zamazenta, Hisui Samurott, Zapdos, Donphan. Why am I forgetting names? Serena, Ironmoth, Diancie, Ursaring, and the Hisui Sliggoo. So that's really good. His Terra types, he has Fire and Ghost on Dragapult. Donphan is Ground, Ice, and Fairy. Diancie's Fairy, Water, Ground. Sliggoo is Steel, Poison, and Water. So one thing I don't really understand here, obviously with tiers on how it worked out, Donphan's your only like 10 to 14 or whatever that you could put in that Terra. But why don't you draft something else that could be much better and put that as Terra? Because Donphan doesn't really want a Terra. It's not a good abuser. If I were Fist, I would drop Ironmoth and get what's his name? It's free and available. I'm gonna switch over. What is it called? Right here, Armarouge. Armarouge would be so good on this team with Terra. It can literally just run like Focus Dash, and like whatever, or is that Cellar Edge? Whatever. No matter what, it's very, very good with Terra on this team. I feel like you have to get something more offensive with the Terra, because this defensive Terra doesn't really do anything for you. I can see where you're going with Terra Ice, trying to hit the Ice Shards, but I don't feel like it's really worth your Terra ever. I feel like Sliggoo, I don't completely understand why you're bringing Poison. You know, you're already immune to Toxic. You have a Ground and Poison in Ironmoth. So what do you exactly need it for? Don't get it, but that's okay. I feel like the rest of it is really good. And definitely Terra Ghost on Dragapult is coming like 99% of the time, and it's going to destroy stuff with Choice Spec Shadow Ball. Look at the speed tiers, and they're great. Like, you have 142, 128, 110, 100 is amazing top tier. I feel like the bottom tier could use a little bit of work. You have 2 base 50s. If you had something, you know, closer into like 60, it would be a little bit better, but you know, that's just nitpicking. So really not that bad. And looking at your team, there's one huge complaint I have, which could have been a good Terra type on Donphan. You don't have a good Ghost. I'm not saying Dragapult. Dragapult's a great Ghost. You're not going to switch into Dragapult on a Rapid Spin. So you have the Samurott Hisui, which is going to set up spikes, but you don't have a good spin blocker because you don't really want to bring Dragapult in all the time. So you just give them free Rapid Spins a lot of the time, and if they make one prediction when you try to go into Dragapult, it's going to die. And as soon as you Terra Fire on that thing, then it's free Rapid Spins. So that's one huge complaint. And, you know, I don't know if Stellar Village is available. It is. But it's right outside your point range, but it's in the same points as Iron Moth. So I feel like Iron Moth for Cellular Edge would be great for your team. Gives you another ghost type to spin block. I feel like it's a better fire type on this sort of team. I feel like it's nice to have another physical attacker because you're going to run special most of the time with Dragapult. You got special Zapdos, you got special Diancie. You know, I'm not sure if Iron Moth really does too much. You know, you have Quiver, but you also have Dragon Dance and you have Iron Defense. I mean, I could be definitely wrong. It also is ×4 weak to ground, which is a huge weakness on your team. You don't really have any good switch-ins except for Zapdos, but Zapdos gets hit by rocks, or it gets hit by Stone Edge, or it clicks Roost, and you just have free Earthquakes against this team. So I feel like Iron Moth might be the Pokemon that I hate the most on their team. Besides that, looks amazing. You know, you have stuff that you can specially sweep with. You have stuff that you can physically sweep with. Great speed tiers, good defenders. Zamazenta is obviously amazing bulk, especially the first time it comes in. But you even have Diancie, who doesn't have the best type but has really good defenses. You have Donphan, who's a huge physical wall. You have Sliggoo, who's known for his special defense. You just have a really, really solid team here. You know, you got rocks on Diancie and Donphan. You got 2 spinners and a defogger, spikes. You have a bunch of momentum. You have a little bit of priority, but I mean, even then, you don't really even need the priority because you're so dang fast. The only things that are going to outspeed you are like extreme speed and other priority anyways. So, I mean, I feel like your team is great. I have a lot of gripe with Iron Moth, but it's one of the better teams that I see. Go on to Team 5 here, which is not actually Team 5. And let's see, who are these people? I don't have everyone memorized. Oh, this is Crepuscul. I don't know if that's how you pronounce it. Crepuscul. I know that's how you spell it, though. It's on the dock. And then 0. So let's start with Crep. It has Kyurem. First round Kyurem. Kyurem is a absolute demon. One of my favorite Pokemon to use. I've had it as kill leader. I've had it just destroy stuff, and that's before I got Dragon Dance and Icicle Spear. So this thing can run anything, just destroy stuff. You have the Necrozma, which is pretty good. Skeledirge, Tinglu, Weezing, Galar, Suicune, Mienshao, Terra Noivern, Tinkaton, and Meganium. On first looks here, it looks way too defensive. I mean, like, what are you gonna sweep with? It's Kyurem. You have Kyurem. That's it. You're doubled up on the dragons. You can sweep with Necrozma, definitely. But are you really gonna be able to break and sweep with this team? I feel like this team could be really well built for teams that don't have that much offense, because your defensive Pokemon are just gonna be able to click Toxic and click Spikes and Stealth Rocks and wear down the opponent's team. But against some sort of hyper offense, which like Fist is gonna destroy this team because it has like decent walls, but you're never gonna threaten them offensively. You have decent speed tiers. Only 2 things above 100 is subpar, but you have setup on your Kyurem. You can autonomize on the Necrozma, and you have really, really spread out speed tiers in here. So I really like it. It really forces a lot of prep. Looking at the type matchups here, you did pretty well. You're not super weak to rocks. Obviously, some of your most important Pokemon, Kyurem and Skeledirge, are going to be weak to rocks, but Skeledirge is Terra. Noivern's also Terra, so I guess I should go over your Terra types. Because you have Necrozma with Steel and Psychic. Skeledirge is Fire, Fairy, Water. Noivern is Dragon, Normal, and Fire. And Meganium is Grass, Fairy, Fire. Specifically in here, I really like the Noivern. I like Terra Noivern. It just clicks Terra Normal Noivern, it just clicks Boom Burst. It destroys. Terra Fire Noivern clicks Flamethrower, and it does a lot of damage if you put specs on it. And it's a huge offensive threat. So potentially that can wall break for you, but I'm still not convinced. Definitely. On this team, looking at the stats here, I feel like you're pretty balanced. Look at all this defense. So you have so many Pokemon over base 100 defense, so many Pokemon with over base 100 HP, a couple Pokemon base 100 special defense. But I mean, your attackers, you have Kyurem, who's going to attack on one side. You got Mienshao if that really wants to come all the time. If it does, it's pretty much forced into a Scarf. And you've got Necrozma here. So besides a Dragon Dancing Kyurem, you don't really have like the best physical attackers. You're going to want to run special a lot of the time to destroy stuff with Ice Beam, Freeze Dry, Earth Power, Dragon Pulse, Draco Meteor, whatever you run. You're going to destroy stuff. I feel like you need to switch out some of this defense for some offense, especially in this meta. I don't think the defense is really going to get you too far. You know, you have good hazard setters. Set up Toxic Spikes, set up Stealth Rocks, and you try to sweep. But you don't have a spinner. You just have 2 defoggers, and you really don't want to run defog too much on these Pokemon. Your momentum is lackluster as well. Both these Pokemon will run U-turn every single week, but it still is just not the best. You know, you have no priority on your team at all. You're not going to run Extreme Speed Suicune. You might run Fake Out. You know, I feel like this team definitely needs some improvements. I could not tell you where I would start with that. I feel like maybe you got to rework it, man. I mean, go ahead and prove me wrong, but I feel like this team, as soon as you like kill off the breakers and sweepers, they're dead. If you set up hazards, like Kyurem doesn't want to run boots unless it's, you know, a very, very like breaking and then you're sweeping with Necrozma. But you're really not going to run boots, and your defog pressure is immense. They really have to not take moves. They have to click defog. You get free switches, free hits. I feel like this team just really needs something else on it to spice it up. Next up, we got Zero. Zero is an amazing battler. #1 in the low tier league right now. This is before we play our playoff game, so we'll see about that one. But they have Roaring Moon, Spectrier, Ogerpon, Hearthflame, Hatterene, Lilligant, Walking Wake, Sandy Shocks, Ninetales, Leafeon, and Tropius. This team is it's good. Yeah, I don't know what to say about this team. I can't tell if I love it or if I hate it. On first impression, I feel like Roaring Moon is not as good as it chops up to be. Like, you feel like it would be so... Sorry, excuse me. You feel like it would be so good, but it's not actually that good. With Terra, it's obviously going to be a lot better. You have Terra Dark and Terra Flying, but you're still not really going to be putting pressure on the fairy types. They're going to be either switching into you or just being able to destroy you anyways. I would have loved to see Terra Steel. I feel like that would be a little bit better because then you flip the type matchup. But I mean, I guess it's good if you want to click Acrobatics, if you want to click Terra Blast Flying to try to catch some stuff off guard, but you don't really need to kill the grass types because you're a sun team. So I'm not 100% sure about this thing. Spectrier is good, but has a lot of hard counters in draft. I feel like in draft, it definitely makes the opponent prepare for the Spectrier, or else you can get swept, but it can be pretty easily countered, I think. Ogerpon Hearthflame is good. You have the Magic Bounce, but that's your only real way to deal with hazards. I feel like you have Defog on like Tropius, and that's it besides your Magic Bounce. So you're really relying on Hatterene. I feel like to any game, you have to bring Hatterene, like no matter what. And then if you don't want to bring Sun, what else are you bringing? Like Roaring Moon, Spectrier, Ogerpon, probably Sandy Shocks, and then you have to bring one of the Sun Mons. So I feel like this team is kind of locked into Sun every single week, which is really tough. Obviously Sun is really good for getting photosynthesis on all 3 of their Paradox Pokemon and makes Roaring Moon that much better. But you have to bring Sun every week. And if you don't bring it, then your team is just like way weaker. So what I see doing against this team is just baiting out the Hatterene, killing it, setting up rocks, and being able to destroy it and whittle down their team. If you can knock off or just knock out the Ninetales in general, then your team gets immensely weaker. Speed tiers on this team are great. You honestly like don't even need Sun for all the speed tiers. But I feel like you're forced to run it because, you know, you maybe have 6 Pokemon that you would want to run outside of Sun. Maybe. I don't even know if you really want to run Walking Wake that much because it can get countered by things easily. So I'm not sure about that. You have a lot of weaknesses. I mean, that's what is going to happen when you have 4 grass types, 2 fire types, you know. The Rock's weakness is the biggest one I see. Also, Ice destroys you. You don't have an Ice switch in. Well, I feel like you can sometimes switch into your Ninetales and be able to then force out the Ice type, set up a Growth or a Dragon Dance. I mean, you probably wouldn't be able to set up a Dragon Dance. Set up something and be able to sweep after that. But, you know, like Kyurem on their team just destroys you if it sets up a Dragon Dance. You know, it really forces a lot of stuff. Forces a kill on the Ninetales, which then destroys your entire offense. Poison, just look at that against their team. Destroys them. Flying, destroys them. Even Bug, you know, Ghost, Rock, Dragon is really good into them. You have a lot of good stats on your team, but this also kind of suffers from the no walls. You have Hatterene who can eat up some special attacks, maybe a couple physical, but then what else do you have? You have Leafeon, that's not going to run as a wall. You have Roaring Moon, it's not going to run as a wall. Spectrier can Calm Mind, but I feel like if you really get some good pressure, if you run something as like Choice Banded set that's fast, it can get a kill every single time it comes out. I feel like from earlier, you set up, you get like one swords, you don't even need a Sword Stance on the Sneasler. You run Terra Fairy and you Acrobatics and you delete their entire team. There's not too much they can do about it. You know, yeah, look at this, the 2 Defoggers, which are never going to run Defog if you bring them. Tropius will probably come to like 1 or 2 games. Okay, you have one of the best Stealth Rock and Spike setter in Sandy Shocks, which is great, but your team is still just super weak to hazards. You got 3 Healing Wish, which is crazy, and you know, a little bit of momentum, but I feel like this team, it's definitely disappointing me a little bit. The more I look at it, the more disappointing I think it is, and a sudden team, it should be easily countered. Let's go on to our next pair. I think we're gonna get Milk. Yep, Milk and Spin. Milk and Spin. So let's go over Milk's team first. You draft Blaziken, then Ogerpon, the water one. Don't really know what it's called. What is it? Wellspring. That's it. Got Latias, King Gambit, Mamoswine, Alcremie, Miss Magius, Glamora, Regigigas, and Orthworm. Their speed tiers are pretty good, except for you have like a big gap between 100 and 86. 86 is much better than 85, in my opinion. I mean, obviously it's a little better, but it's much better because it's gonna just be able to outspeed everything, force stuff to run Jolly or Timid. And I feel like you just have sort of an issue because, I mean, even Regigigas, it's gonna be halved for the first couple turns. So you really have a gap between 86 and 105. And then you have doubled up on the 110s. So anything faster than that really just has to aim for one stat. Doesn't have to allocate too much. You have 2 base 80s, but you have the speed boost Blaziken, which is really saving your speed tiers here, which is why it's not horrible, because this thing can kick it up and outspeed a lot of stuff. So that's the biggest thing for them. Your Terra Mons, you have Terra Ogerpon, which is just water. And you have Mismagius with Ghost, Fire, Electric. Glamora is Poison, Flying, and Water. And Regigigas is Normal, Bug, and Fairy. I feel like your Terra types are pretty whack here. First of all, I feel like Blaziken, I don't know if I said Blaziken was a banned one, but Blaziken, Latias, and Kingambit are much better Terras than Ogerpon. Just much better. You know, Blaziken just destroys things with Terra. So you click Swords Dance, you click Protect, and you sweep. Latias can get like Calm Mind sweeps. You get Draining Kiss with Terra Fairy, and it destroys. Kingambit loves to be Terra. It hates its 4 times weakness to fighting, hates the weakness to ground. It likes to be like a Fairy type, which would be great. And you really lack a good Fairy type on this team. I feel like you need a Terra Fairy on Mismagius, but you don't even run that. Fire and Electric are pretty good, but you need Terra Fairy to really have any sort of offensive threat against Dragon types. Because Latias, if you're not running Scarfed, you don't have no offensive threat. Glamora, I feel like your Terra types are decent on Glamora. You know, Flying is great to be immune to the ground. But I feel like Terra Ghost would also be pretty good on this thing to act as a spin blocker for all the hazards it's going to set up. Regigigas, I mean, it's the only thing on your team that would fit with the Terra, but Bug is a horrible Terra type. Don't understand that one bit. And you're going to bring Regigigas to like 2 games. So I'm not sure. Looking at your type matchup, it's really not too bad. Shows fighting on here, which obviously is a big weakness for your Kingambit. You know, it's going to hit a lot of stuff hard, but it's not the end of the world. You can switch into Alcremie. You can switch into Mismagius. You can switch into Latias. You know, water is another huge thing for your team, but you have an immunity in Ogerpon. You have resistance in Latias, even though it doesn't want to come in all the time. So I definitely see what you're going for there. Stats look pretty good across the board. I'm definitely not worried about this. Your physical defense is great with Kingambit, and Earthworm is amazing. And everything on your team is decently bulky. Like the least bulky thing is going to be Blaziken, who's your premier sweeper and wall breaker. So I don't have any issues with all those. You know, something that I do have an issue with is you have Mortal Spin on Glamora, and that's all. You know, you have great rock support, but you don't block spins very well. You don't get spins off very well, especially after Glamora's down or if it's running an offensive spec. And you have Defog, but you're never going to run it on either of these 2 Pokemon. It's really not good. You know, your momentum, you don't really have too much momentum. You have Shed Tail, which you can pass to Blaziken or Latias. I mean, anything to sweep. But, you know, Hazard Control can really get you. You hate having Sticky Webs set up against your team. Sticky Webs are so good into, you know, Mamo. It's so good into Blaziken. It's so good into Ogerpon. You hate rocks on your team. Good into Mamo. I mean, it's good into everything. Just chipping down your team is really good. And I'm not sure if you have everything that you can deal with it. That being said, Earthworm shed tailing into any of these threats is going to be disgusting. Kingambit is super powerful. Got the Sucker Punch. Blaziken's going to be able to break holes in everything and just sweep half the weeks. And Ogerpon Ivy Cudgel has very little switch-ins. So I feel like this team is actually pretty good, but you need a couple more moves on this to make it like an A tier team, I would say. Next, we're going to move on to Spin. And Spin has the team Gouging Fire, Clefable, Keldeo, Scizor, Clodsire, Mandibuzz, Raging Bolt, Sinistra, Golduck, Marill, and Vulpix. So I mean, Marill and Vulpix, they are just there. You know, never gonna run that. Scizor has Terra Steel, Fire, and Water. Raging Bolt has Electric and Fairy, which I love, by the way. Amazing Terras. Sinistra has Ghost, Steel, Water. Golduck has Water, Fairy, and Ice. I feel like you really need the Terrifier on the Raging Bolt. It's so very good into every team. Nothing really wants to take, Thunderclap, Draco Meteor, and Terra Fairy Blast. It's gonna be able to destroy stuff, and I wish that I had Terra on it in the PSL, but I do not. So I'm not gonna be able to destroy things like they are. I'm not 100% sold on Sinistra and Golduck, but I feel like that they could definitely work. Looking at their speed tiers, you don't have anything too fast. A 108 is your fastest, which is tough in a league where everyone has something like 110 or over. You're going to be forced to run Scarf. And what are your good Scarf candidates here? Keldeo, you don't really want to run Scarf Gouging Fire. You want to try to, set that up or run Band or something. Golduck, but Golduck's not really going to come every game. So I don't know what you're going to do for your speed control. Looks definitely a little bit tough. Could improve a lot by having a Sticky Webber. I feel like that would be really, really good. Looking at the weaknesses, Ground is pretty good into you, but tearing your Raging Bolt is really just going to flip that, and it's not like Vulpix actually matters. I feel like you address everything really well in your Terra types. The one thing that is going to be annoying for you to deal with is rocks, because they're just going to whittle down your Gouging Fire, and you're not going to want to run heavy duty boots. So you're forced to run boots on the Mandibuzz and click Defog. So I feel like that has to come to almost every game. Look at the team average stats, and it looks horrible, but I think it's just being dragged down by Marill and Vulpix, to be honest. Because looking at the stats, you got Scizor as good defensive wall, even though it doesn't want to be a wall all the time. It can definitely suffice because you also have Mandibuzz. And then you have good special, you have Clodsire. Clodsire is going to eat a lot of stuff. Mandibuzz is going to eat stuff too. I feel like you're in a pretty decent spot where you're a good mix between a little bit of defensive stuff, so you're not going to get swept every week, but you have a lot of offense. With Calm Mind, Raging Bolt, you have Keldeo, you have Gouging Fire. You can set up with Sinistra, you can set up with Scizor, set up with Clefable. Clefable's unaware in case you're going up against Shell Smash. So I feel like this team is really, really well-rounded. You just have the 2 defoggers, but it's not horrible. I feel like you're almost forced to bring Mandibuzz every single week and run defog, which definitely sucks, but it could be much worse. If you want to run hazards, you either have to risk your Clef for it or bring Claude. And Claude has a lot of good matchups, but also just has really bad matchups. If you're fighting against a really good ground type, you're not really going to want to run Claude because you don't have the best ground resistances. You just have Mandibuzz. Looking further down here, I like what Clef does here. Obviously Heal Bell, Healing Wish. You're not going to run it all the time, but if you need it, it's really good. It's really good at getting burns off your Scizor, or getting paras off your Gouging Fire, or off your Sinistra. It's just a really good mon for the rest of your team, who have definitely a good amount of momentum on here. And then a couple Aqua Jetters, you have Bullet Punch. So I feel like your team, it definitely is not the worst team out here. It's definitely not the best, but it's got to be somewhere in the middle. You got to figure out something with speed. You almost need setup to be faster than anything, or else you're forced to run 1 or even 2 Scarfs every week. All right, going on to the next 2 teams. It's going to be we're going to have Caleb, who I'm pretty sure won the last season. Pangolin, who's in the playoffs of low tier right now. So 2 very good players. Caleb drafted Darkrai, Deoxys Defense, Skarmory, Cyclizar, Annihilate, Swampert, Rotom, Heat, Whimsicott, Regice, Weezing, Slaking, and Zweilous. So Shedtail into this team is disgusting. If you get Shedtail into Annihilate, you can easily set up a bunch of bulks bulk ups. You can't be toxic behind that sub. You can go out to Darkrai, set up nasty plot, hypnosis, do a lot of shenanigans, which is going to be super hard to stop. You have great speed tiers, 125, 121, 116, 100, 290s, but I mean, it just fills out really, really well. One thing that I do see on this team is that it might be just a little bit passive. You know, you got Deoxys defense, you have Skarmory, you have the Swampert, you have Weezing. All that stuff is pretty passive. Even Whimsicott is passive. So I'm not 100% sure how you break all the time. Like besides your setup mons behind Shed Tail, but definitely prove me wrong with that. Your Terra types on Deoxys, you have Psychic, Fairy, and Water. Annihilate is Ghost and Water. Whimsicott, Fairy, Fire, Flying. Regice, Ice, Ground, Water. You know, a lot of these I don't really hate, except for Annihilate. I feel like, I could be wrong, but I feel like Terra Poison would be better on Annihilate because you never really want to get toxic. If you get toxic, then that's just such a big part of your team that's gone. So if I run Toxic Spikes against you, you don't have a Grounded Poison unless you're running the other ability on Weezing. So I feel like Poison might just be a little bit better on Annihilate. I also don't love Deoxys defense as a Terra captain. I feel like Cyclizar would be a little bit better in that point range, especially because I don't know, I just don't see what Terra Fairy and Terra Water are gonna do for you. One other gripe I have about your team is that you don't have a powerful Fairy offense. You have Whimsicott, and half the time it's gonna tear it out of that anyways if it's coming. So I'm not 100% sure what you're gonna do. Looking at your weaknesses, you don't take fighting types very well. I mean, that's putting in Zweilous and putting in Slacking. But a lot of your big threats, so Cyclizar and Darkrai, they don't really want to take it. You know, you have Regice here, which is going to come. It definitely whittles down your Skarmory, your Salamence, and your Rotom. Obviously, Annihilate can come in on the fighting type moves, but not all the time do you want to switch in your Annihilate like that. You know, I like it. I like what you're going with on this team. I think that it's very good. I feel like you have really good stats across the board. You know, you have a lot of, attackers, you got Annihilate. You know, if you really need a lot of physical attack, you got Slacking. You know, you got Swampert that can hit pretty hard. You have Cyclizar who's going to run attack. You have Darkrai that's going to special attack. You have Rotom Heat that's going to throw off a bunch of special attacks. Regice. You know, a lot of stuff just does a lot of damage. And then your walls are crazy. You have so many base 100 defense and special defense Pokemon that it's going to be hard to break through this team. And then if you give up just one little bit of momentum to them, they're going to Shed Tail out and just sweep you. So that's how they're going to win. They have lots of Stealth Rockers and Spikers. They have a couple of Defoggers and Rapid Spin. So I feel like they have pretty good hazard control here. One thing, you're not really going to want to run Rapid Spin all the time. You probably bring Defog 99% of the time on the, what's it called? The Skarmory. But you don't want to get rid of your own Stealth Rocks or Spikes. And that thing is going to be pressed for moves, you know, running Roost, both hazards, Body Press, Iron Defense. So, you know, it might not be as good as it actually looks here on paper. You have good momentum, which is really important for this team because you just need to get really good positioning. And it's going to be your positioning that wins you games because then you're able to go out to Annihilate, go out to Darkrai, and just sweep teams. You have really no priority at all, which is unfortunate, but I think you can make do because your team is really bulky. Even your sweepers are bulky, with Annihilate having base 110 HP. Darkrai having 90 defense, 90 special defense is really nothing to scoff at. Next, we're going to go to Pangolin, and Pangolin has the Latios, Goldango, Regieleki, Meowscarada, Staraptor, Ribombee, Toxapex, Landorus, Incarnate, Dachshund, and the Crocalore. One thing that kind of confuses me on this team is why do you need Rabombi? Obviously, you need a good fairy type. I feel like the fairy type special moves are really good, but setting up sticky webs doesn't really do too much for your team because you have base 200 speed Regieleki, you have base 123 Meowscarada, you have base 110 Latios, you know, you have 101 Landers, 100 on your Skarmory. I keep saying Skarmory, Staraptor. I love Staraptor too. But I feel like Rabombi is kind of just like filling a hole here, which needs to just be a better fairy type. Offensive fairy would be so good. Next, on this team, I feel like we shouldn't have let them get Meowscarada. Meowscarada should not be 17-point Pokemon. It should be 19. It's probably one of the best Pokemon in draft format. In DLC 2, it gets triple axle, which just makes it a much better Weavile, in my opinion. It is so good. You also have Goldango. So, I mean, if you end up getting up your toxic spikes or you end up getting up those webs, they're never going to go away because you have that thing. Goldango is just really good in general. Terra Latios is crazy. You have Psychic and Poison, so you're never going to get toxic. And you can just set up and sweep on a lot of things. You only have the weakness to Psychic because you have Levitate. Toxapex is running a Terra, Water, Fairy, and Ground. Dowshbun has Fairy, Ghost, Dragon. Crocalore has Terra, Fire, Ghost, Flying. And now, some of these Terra types do confuse me. First of all, why is Toxapex a Terra? I get that you might want to run it as like some other sort of wall, you know, that doesn't get destroyed by electric type moves or doesn't get destroyed by ground type moves. I understand that, but I feel like terraing defensively in this draft league, in this meta, is not really going to be good. I feel like you want to put that on your Staraptor, or even on your Rabombi. You could keep Rabombi on your team, run Terra Fairy on that thing, and try to destroy teams, break them at the beginning of the game. Instead of just setting up webs, you just Terra Fairy, Moonblast everything. You go Terra Normal or Terra Flying Staraptor, Terra Fighting, and just destroy stuff with like Reckless, Choice Band, even Choice Scarf sets if you want to outspeed stuff. I feel like those are two way better choices than Toxapex. A Dashbun, why are you running Terra Dragon? I understand that it like resists a good amount of stuff, but I feel like that's not really needed. You're already immune to fire, so maybe going something else on your team that is weak to fire, but you kind of need a little bit more of, like Steel. Like you have Goldango, but you don't have any other Steel types. So I feel like running Steel on your Dashbun could be a little bit better. And then Crocalore, Terra Flying, I get it could be there to be immune to the ground type attacks. You already have 3 immunities on your team to ground, and 2 resistances. I feel like it could be a little bit better if you go maybe Terra Water, especially with Toxapex trying Terra. I feel like Terra Water on that thing could be good as well. I like the Terra Ghost though, trying to be spin blockers, be ghost type, be normal type eaters. Speed is obviously amazing, as we went over. Types, you're very, very weak to ice. You have a couple resistances, but nothing's going to want to eat a freeze dry. Like, it just destroys your team. Like a Scarf Curum eats you alive. Specs Curum eats you even harder. I said about ground type, but you have 3 immunities, 2 resistances. It's really not as bad as it seems. But one thing I would like you to do is pick up something that destroys ground types a little bit better. Obviously a Meowscarada, who's going to destroy them. But what else on your team clears them out for Regieleki to be able to do a lot of damage? You know, nothing really puts that much pressure on them. I feel like that's really important. You have a rock weakness. Rocks are pretty nasty against you because looking down here, you have 1 spinner, which is Regieleki. You have a couple of defoggers, but none of them want to run defog. None of them. Maybe Rabombi, but you're going to be setting up sticky webs anyways. You have good spikes. I really like the spikes on Meowscarada, but I feel like your hazard control in general just could be better. You have a lot of momentum. Obviously, Masquerado's one of the best to do it. You have Volt Switch and U-turn. You know, you're just destroying stuff. You don't really need priority because you have base 200 speed Regieleki. Pretty much priority anyways. But if you do, you have Sucker Punch on Meow. You have Knockoff on Meow that's going to destroy things. You know, this team is really good. You just need to patch up like 1 or 2 holes. Maybe fix your Terra types. And try to grab something that is going to be able to destroy the ground types. Maybe, you know, a bulkier ice type, like a low tier Glastrier, just like bops those ground types. Makes them think twice before bringing 5 ground types against your team. And I think that brings us full circle to me, which is Pup. And then my week 1 opponent, which is Dino. I'm going to go over their team on the right. I'll go over mine last. So they've got Dragonite, Great Tusk, Volcarona, Primarina, Abomasnow, Jirachi, Raikou, Snorlax, Minior, and the Duskull. Yeah. I put both Miniors on here since they have different stats. So before Minior transforms, you're going to have 3 base 60s, but afterwards you're going to get base 120 speed, which is pretty good. Your speed tiers in general, you got the 115 and 2 100s, which is pretty nice. You drop down to 87, but you can always run booster speed on this thing. You have Quiver Dance on, what's his name? On Volcarona. You have Shell Smash. I feel like you have pretty good speed tiers. Going over your Terra typings, you have Normal and Flying on Dragonite, which Normal is just a monster with extreme speed. Abomasnow is Grass, Water, and Ghost. Raikou is Electric, Flying, and Water. Duskull is Ghost, Fairy, Steel. There is one small issue with the Terra types. I think I would rather see on Raikou you put Terra Fairy, because Fairy just smacks a lot of teams. It's so powerful. I see that you have Primarina, but getting a fast Fairy is just really good. I think that Terra Dragonite is the right call, but Terra Volcarona also could be really good to just be able to set up and sweep. And I feel like below the points, instead of Terra Abomasnow, Terra Minior is just better because it destroys things. You put like Terra Rock on there, you put Terra Ghost, and you put Terra Water or Terra Flying. You put whatever you want on there. You want to resist extreme speed or be immune to it. You want to resist Ice Shard. You want to get super hard hits on acrobatics. I would just put it on there instead of Abomasnow. Alright, looking at their stats down here, huge rocks weakness. I mean, they're probably going to run heavy duty boots. They're going to be forced to run heavy duty boots on the Volk. You know, you want the Dragonite to have boots or rocks just not be up so you don't take a lot of damage on Dragonite and break your multi-scale. But you look down here, you have a spinner, probably one of the best spinners in the game. But your 2 defoggers, they don't want to come in on hazards anytime. So obviously it's very, very nice to have Great Tusk for their team, but I'm not sure it's enough to make up for their Stealth Rock weakness. And you'll see if I exploit that in week 1. Anyways, like, just looking at this team, they have a lot of really good stats. I feel like Snorlax fills a lot of holes here. Make sure that, you know, I can't bring, well, I'll spoil my team builder. Like, I can't bring Chi-Yu just Choice Specs because I'm gonna get walled by Snorlax. You know, it fills that hole. I can't really bring Regidrago with specs because it's gonna get walled by Primarina. They have a lot of really good Pokemon that synergize well with each other. Definitely a very, very scary week 1 matchup for me to be in. And I feel like they have one of the more well-rounded teams if they have a better plan to get rid of hazards. I feel like getting another Rapid Spinner on this team is a must-need, but that's one of the only changes that I would make. Maybe even like Duskull, which is a 1-point Pokemon, if you can get a 1-point spinner or a 1-point defogger that can actually come reliably, then that would be really good. Abomasnow isn't the best on this team. It's really nice to have Veil to be able to set up your sweepers, but I mean, if you get rid of that, or you get rid of Snorlax and get something that's better with Rapid Spin, I feel like this team might be a little bit better. All right, go down here. They have a couple rockers. Jirachi and Great Tusk are your premier rockers, which are both really good at their job. You have a decent amount of momentum, but you don't really want to bring U-turn on Volk or Minior that often. You have really this Volt Switch and Flip Turn that you're going to bring. And once you get those Volt Switches off, or a slow Flip Turn off with Primarina, you get to go into Dragonite and sweep or just kill me with Banded E-Speed. You get to go into Volk and you get to Quiver Dance up. You know, it's a really, really well-rounded team. And they're probably got to be one of my favorites, to be honest. But it all comes back to me. So this is my team. Obviously, I just went over it the other day in the draft recap, so I'll go over it a little bit fast. Iron Val, Slowking, Galar, Empoleon, Chi-Yu, Regidrago, Kilowattrel, Golurk, Thwackey, Ditto, Komala, and Torn T. Look at my speed tiers here. I feel like there's a gap between 180 that I wish I could have addressed. I feel like Regidrago kind of fills a similar role to Chi-Yu, where it's just a special bomb. I feel like I don't have enough physical attacking on my team. I can obviously run Iron Valiant as a physical attacker, but I want to run it special most of the weeks because Moonblast just destroys a lot of teams. And then that leaves me with maybe Dragon Dance Regidrago. You know, it leaves me with Thwackey, it leaves me with Golurk. I can run physical Torn. So those are a couple ideas about my team. Definitely weak to ice, but I have Empoleon to try to mend that. I feel like I don't have a very, very good physical defense wall. I feel like my special defense walling is very, very good, but physical defense, it could definitely use some work. Iron Valiant is the highest physical defense. And then we obviously have Regidrago with a lot of HP, and we have Slowking that has pretty good defense as well. And you also look at my hazards. I don't have the best rock setter. Empoleon is obviously really good. And I have a couple defoggers and a spinner, but I'm not going to bring Komala very often. I'm not going to bring defog on these two every week. You know, so it's really tough. Got good momentum, but I feel like I might be doubling up on my rolls too much. I feel like if I switch out Golurk for a better rocker and a better defensive wall, could be better. I mean, just looking at the draft board now, I'm not 100% sure what I could have gotten for 8 points that would have been better. I wanted to use Golurk, but I could pick up like Bronzong, which could wall better for me physically. I could have picked up like him on top, which has Intimidate and a better spinner. You know, so just stuff like that I feel like could have been better on my team. And like Sandaconda, it could have been better. But I still think that my team is really good. I don't know where I would rate it compared to the other drafts. Just because it's mine, I would definitely have some bias. I definitely don't think that it's top 5. I feel like if I had to actually rank them, and I won't rank them, but I'll tell you what is top 5. And I think that, let me look through it really quick. I think Dino's team has to be top 5 for sure. Fist is going to be top 5 as well. And I mean, that's where it really gets scary. I think Milk's team is top 5. Blaziken, King Gambit is destructive. Obscured is obviously top 5 with Rillaboom, Sneasler. And in that last slot, I really don't know. I think Rampiore. You got Baxcalibur, Alolan Ninetales, Palafin. Could be another top 5 team. You also have Dries that could be chilling in there too. So there's a lot of really good teams in here. And I don't know, how it's going to end up. I hope that we're able to take out some of those good teams. Hope we can take out Dino in the first week. But if you guys have any disagreements with what I say about them, about their teams, let me know what you guys think. maybe I forgot something. You know, I'm not perfect. It's been going on for a long time talking about these teams. But I feel like this is a pretty good analysis of everyone's teams. If you guys liked it, please be sure to leave a like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in our next battle. See you guys.